Welcome to Cardano Over Coffee. Please remember to join us live Monday through Friday on Twitter at 1:30 p.m. UTC, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube and download our podcast on all major platforms. Today's guest is Sebastien, CTO and co-founder of DC Spark, Mocomeda, Paima Studios, and Flint Wallet. Stay tuned for this action-packed episode. Don't forget we'll be at Rare Evo in Denver, Colorado, August 24th through the 26th. Get your tickets at rareevo.io. Use discount code COC10 for 10% off. Grab your coffee. Let's get right to it.
Before we jump into Paima itself, Sebastian, I think most people know you, but feel free to share maybe anything some people might not know about you if you want to. And then how many NFTs do you have if you want to share that information?
Info that people don't know about me. I feel like I share a lot of what I do online already.
Right.
So I
So
feel like I'm
if you
already
feel
a
like
fairly
there's
public
people,
person.
well, then yeah, that's why I have the fallback question of how many NFTs do you have, if you want to answer that.
The question
Yeah,
might not be how many NFTs you have, but how many stateful NFTs do you have?
No.
yeah, good question. Well, the answer is not enough. I would buy into more NFT collections, but unfortunately the price is always way too high for me to want to be part of these. So a lot of the NFTs I have, they're usually like some of the lower cost ones. So like double-digit dollars is fine for me. If I have to pay thousands of dollars to be part of the community, sorry, I just can't afford this to be honest. Um, so I mean I really like the concept of stateful NFTs because hopefully will enable more projects to have unlimited supplies instead of right now where the kind of game is to make a limited supply and then artificially limit the growth of your community. Because I see a lot of NFT projects where I'm like, oh man, this is like a really cool vibe. I'd really love to be part of this community, chill with these people, do some cool stuff, and then I look at the mint price and it's like $1,000. I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, I can't really afford that, and then I just pass. And so hopefully we'll move away from this kind of NFT narrative and towards something where it's more democratic. Because I feel like it's kind of strange. Like brands globally are trying to get as many people involved in their brand as possible, whereas a lot of NFTs just focus on like exclusive clubs. And I get that there's always going to be a market for exclusive clubs, but I wish I could own more NFTs and be part of more communities. So it's my one regret. Maybe one day if I'm a millionaire, I can just buy a bunch of NFTs and be part of all the exclusive clubs. But until then, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Breaking out, Lido.
Gosh. Is this better? Is this better?
Yes, that's better.
Um, let's get to Paima Studios. I've heard a lot.
No, it's not better.
Yeah, cut out for a second there.
Lido.
Knock, knock.
Oh, well.
Who's
Lido
there?
abandoned us. I hope we're right.
Oh, yeah. I know he's traveling, so we'll see. Well, the co-hosts are here. We're strong. We'll keep the signal together.
Yes, let's just get going with Paima Studios, which is so exciting. Tell us a little bit about Paima Studios. I know that it's a layer 2 gaming engine, the Paima engine. Tell us a little bit about that engine.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So right now, as I mentioned, like there's a lot of entities out there with existing brands, and given the fact that there's a million entities out there right now, these entity projects want to try and keep their community engaged and involved in their brand on a day-to-day basis. One of the best ways to do that is, of course, gaming, because then you have something for people to come back to on a daily basis and something they can enjoy and interact with, kind of in an online setting. Now, there's two problems typically. One is that these NFT creators are usually not developers. So if you ask them to write Plutus or Solidity, it's going to be hard. And if they outsource it, it's really expensive. You might not be able to do that. And even if they did manage to outsource it and pay all the costs and manage to get something done, deploying any kind of smart contract, as you may know, is a huge risk, because if it's got a bug, this could get hacked and destroy their entire brand. So, this is something like gaming is something that a lot of these projects want to get into, but it's just the current ecosystem does not make it so friendly to them. So what we've done with Paima Engine is we allow...
At this point of the show, the Twitter space crashed.
Shrek and us. So for now, there you go. We're more stable now. Please share out the space. And I'm so sorry about that. We're like halfway through this explanation of Paima Studios. It was so interesting. So do you remember where you left off? You want to just kind of like get that one a new start?
Yeah, sure. So we have these NFT creators that want to build on-chain games to, continue building their brand. And so we've built Paima Engine, which allows you to create your on-chain applications in a Web2 setting. So you can use JavaScript, Unity, GameMaker, Godot, these kinds of settings to easily create your application with Web2 skills, even ChatGPT if you want to. And then you can deploy that as an on-chain application, so it doesn't need to use a centralized server. And now you got a cool way for your community to interact with your brand. And notably, the way that these get created is that we split up the game itself from user assets. And so even if the game gets hacked, user assets are not at risk. So it's, not only an easy way to, enter Web3, have your brand kind of build a more interactive experience, but it's also, a very safe way to do it as well.
So how does this Paima Studio came to be? Are you a gamer? How did that? I remember talking to you during Rare Bloom. You're very excited about it, and but to me, I had no idea that was coming. So, where you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've been interested in layer 2s for a long time, as you might know. In fact, we've been petitioning for more changes to make layer 2s easier in Cardano for years at this point. And we started working on Milkmeta, which was this, layer 2 for Solidity support, for EVM support. I mean, for Cardano, we couldn't make it a layer 2 because Cardano just does not have good support for rollups at the moment. We built a layer 2 for Algorand using some of the technology, and may one day be a proper layer 2 for Cardano. And as we were working on this, we were thinking like, oh man, this is great for, DeFi use cases, but what about, gaming? Like, how do people, build out those kinds of use cases? And we're looking at the layer 2 ecosystems out there, and all of them are DeFi, including ourselves. And we said, well, probably should be at least one layer 2 for gaming, because there's a huge market for this. And right now, it's just everybody's overly focused on, DeFi as the main use case. And so we said, okay, well, let's just, try and think ourselves, like, what does it take to build a really awesome layer 2 for gaming? What are the key properties? And we said, okay, like, the key thing to get people into Web3 is that we need something that's, very low risk or risk free. We need something that's also like low regulatory risk. No, token that could get you into legal trouble required to use this protocol. And it needs to be easy to use. Like, you can't just be Solidity where you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for the simplest applications. And so, with these ideas in mind, we kind of went from the requirements back to like what we need to do to make that come to life. And, that's basically how Paima Engine came to be.
Love it. I really do. I wish I had more time for playing myself, but I definitely want to give it a try. I know you have this Jungle Wars, the NFT Rumble, which is like live to test. Can anybody play? How does it work? Why do I need to
Yeah,
play that game?
anybody can play. You can go to the Paima Studios website, click Jungle Wars, and then you can play with any Cardano wallet. So Flint, Nami, Eternal, whatever you want. In fact, to encourage people to try it out, it's currently free if you use the Cardano wallet. So you don't even need to pay ADA to try it out. You will have to pay if you want to stake NFT for the game. Like, if you want your stats to be tracked, it's about 10 ADA. to have your stats tracked on the blockchain. But if you don't care about having your stats tracked, it's entirely free to play. I will say also that Paima, although it's really awesome for gaming, is also really cool for anything that can be gaming-like. So like traceability, identity, these kinds of use cases, you can think of it as kind of like a game. And notably, I think like one thing that will be really cool to do is proof of attendance. So like if you've ever participated in the Cardano Summit, for example, you'll know that they often do like some kind of NFT drop to show that you participated in the conference.
And for
Now,
spaces, that sounds like great for us too.
yeah, and the problem with these right now is that they're really expensive, especially on Cardano. Like every NFT you have to send is over 1 ADA for not only the minting cost, but also the transaction fees and the mint UTXO. And so if you want to do a kind of airdrop of NFTs for participation to a lot of people, this kind of racks up real quick. And so it's a barrier to entry. So I know a lot of people that want to do more kind of NFT drops like this, but just because of the costs, either have to do like a raffle or just drop the idea altogether. And so one thing we can actually use these stateful NFTs for is kind of like an NFT compression protocol. So you can have one stateful NFT on layer 1 that encodes multiple NFTs on layer 2. And so you can, for example, have a kind of open source standard for this. So everybody gets one NFT, and then all the events you go to, all the spaces, all the conferences, all those NFTs live on the layer 2 associated to your one master proof of attendance NFT on layer 1. And this is really cool because it would allow you to do kind of NFT drops for Twitter spaces and this kind of stuff for very cheap, like, 0.0 something ADA per person, if not even less. So this would be just like a way cheaper and way more flexible way to do these kinds of protocols. And I think, you can think of this as like kind of like a game, which is why Paima can support these kinds of use cases. But you said you're not a gamer, but good news. And there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to use Paima outside of just gaming like this. I'm sure it'll be really exciting for everybody to try out.
That's great. What makes it so cheap?
Yeah, good question. So the main thing that costs a lot of money in blockchains is like smart contract execution and transaction costs, like whenever you're moving assets. So the less smart contracts you can execute, the less like assets you have to move around, the cheaper it is, right? So the way Paima Engine works is that from a layer 1 perspective, it's just pure data. And then what that data means is encoded in the layer 2. So for example, if you did a kind of airdrop of this NFT for your Twitter space, instead of sending like 1,000 assets, which means you have to send over 1,000 ADA as like min UTXO, and then possibly call some smart contract to mint these NFTs in the first place. Now instead you're making like 1,000 pieces of data, packing them all together into a few small transactions, and then just posting those. So the reason layer 2s are so scalable, not just for this use case, but just in general, is because they turn this kind of layer 1 computation cost and asset cost into just purely data cost. And data, as you might know, is much cheaper than compute. Like if you go to an online kind of computer part store, the cost of SSDs and these kinds of data storage is like really, really low, much lower than any kind of computation. And so that's kind of why, layer 2s are so popular, because they take expensive computation power and turn it into just data storage, which is much cheaper.
Sweet, as Lida will say. I think Miggy has been dying to ask a question. What's going on, Miggy?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just wanted to ask Sebastian about something I just mentioned around using Paima for other things, like these layer 2 kind of solutions that besides gaming. And I was wondering, could it be used for things such as supply chain or like payments tracking, stuff off chain, but obviously trying to get that some sort of registry on chain to be able to use it as like a proof of payment or proof of receipts, something like that. Is that something that would be possible with Paima? Or I mean, I imagine it's not something you're working on now, but could integrate, right?
Yeah, good question. It's something we should be able to support and that we wanted to work on. Unfortunately, 24 hours in a day, so we can't work on every use case. But Paima can be used by other companies. So if you want to try and build something, we're happy to get you access to Paima so you can try it out yourself. I will say related to what Paima cannot do is that it cannot do DeFi and gambling. This is not like a legal restriction. This is a tech restriction. And notably, like, what do I mean by can't do DeFi? Like, what does that actually mean in practice? You'll see a lot of layer 2s right now where you can put like 5 ADA into layer 2 and then use a DEX or call some smart contracts, make some money, and then take 10 ADA out later. And then the whole point of layer 2 is to prove that you didn't steal money, you really did make money on the layer 2 and you can take out to 10 ADA. Right? So like the ZK proofs, the optimistic proofs, like all these are to prove that you're not stealing money and you really can take this money out of layer 2. But there's a lot of use cases where you don't need this. Like you're not putting $5 into a bottle of wine to take $10 out later. You're not putting $5 into an identity to take $10 out later. And similarly, for a lot of games, you're not putting $5 into a mobile game to take $10 out later. So these kinds of use cases where you don't need this kind of like a bi-directional bridging of assets, we support with Paima. So for this kind of like traceability use case, Paima is great for this because, you know, what you're really trying to track is just like these data on chain and these NFTs on chain. And you don't need to like put money into these like bottles of wine to take money out later. All you really need is just these NFTs to track identity and this data to track what happened to this identity, and that's all you need. And so for these kinds of use cases, the fact that we don't support DeFi is actually really great because it means that it's much cheaper, much safer, and also much more flexible because now you don't need to use Solidity and you can just use like JavaScript to write your whole traceability system, which is much easier, much cheaper to do.
So on the data piece that of Paima, the Paima layer, so is there not a concept of an account or some ownership? Is that delegated to the layer 2?
Yeah, so the ownerships live on the layer 1. That's what the stateful NFTs are. So your stateful NFT is like your layer 1 encoding of the account on the layer 2.
Ooh.
So that's why, for example, if you build a game with Paima, you can give every user of your game a stateful NFT, and if they sell that stateful NFT, they're also selling like basically their entire account, all their wins, their losses, their items.
So there will be. Sorry, Sarah, to interrupt. Would there be like a marketplace for those for NFTs, like representing that would actually show like what the in-game ownership of that NFT is, or what it's earned in game, what level it is in the game? Is that something that Paima will be building out, or would it have to be down to the individual project? Yeah, that has those stateful NFTs, or would it be individual stateful NFTs for each project, or is it? Maybe I'm confusing that myself.
Yeah, good question. It is a business opportunity, right, for the taking for somebody to build. We will build some stuff ourselves, but obviously we have a limited amount of time, so we can't build everything. So I'm really excited to see what kind of tools people build. I will say that, you know, Paima is a new ecosystem, and so there are no standards yet, really. And so, you know, obviously you can build like NFT marketplaces and all this kind of stuff that show the data on layer 2. But just like how Cardano NFTs took a while for people to decide like how to best format the data for the NFT to make it easy to show up on JPEG Store and these other marketplaces, you know, I'm sure the same thing will happen with Paima. So right, I'm sure at the start it'll be kind of a wild west, and then people will come up with, you know, cool standards to make this easier to render on different websites. Yeah, it's definitely doable. I think you had another question. I feel like I missed something.
Are you asking Maggie?
Yeah, I mean, you have like 3 questions in
Oh,
one.
sorry. Yeah, I don't know. No, I put my hand up. I don't know. I thought it was like that. But cool. Yeah, no, I don't know if you answered my question, but I got another one, if that's cool.
Yeah, go for it.
In terms of like data protection, obviously I work at Empower. We have something coming up soon that's to do with like data and stuff. And I was just thinking that Paima sounds like this use case that you're talking about now sounds like it could be really good. But I'm wondering, like, is there for gaming? I'd imagine there's no need for like data protection, right? But if it was a real world use case, it could be like, yeah, it would need some sort of GDPR or whatever for the information that gets logged within
Yeah,
Paima. So
great
they're going to
question.
be.
Yeah, great question. Oh, actually, I remember your previous question also. I'm not sure if it's your question. I think it was Lightus' question maybe, which is like, how many stateful NFTs do you need for your application? I think that's basically what your question was. So do you need to give a stateful NFT for every player? Should this just be, stateful NFTs for identities? How does that look like? It's up to every game to decide. So a game could decide to have one NFT per player. It could decide to have one NFT per player plus some like additional NFTs. Like you can say, okay, we have identities plus like loot boxes, and you can trade these loot boxes on a marketplace. So if at some point you want to sell items in your account, you can take the items out of your account, turn them into a loot box, and sell those on like a NFT marketplace. So it's up to the game to decide, what kind of NFT standards you want to support. Notably, I think there's also a lot of interesting use cases where you can have basically the entire game just be one NFT, such as, for example, like this proof of attendance protocol. Like, I was talking about it originally from like a perspective, like, oh yeah, every user gets like their own attendance record. But you could build like the other way around where like your event is the NFT, and then inside that event NFT, you like encode information about what happened to your event. So you can kind of go the other way around and kind of build a whole experience that's just a single NFT on layer one that is like the identity for your whole game. So there's a lot of flexibility to that. And answering that question, I forgot Miggy's question. Sorry, too many things in my head. Miggy, could you repeat what your question was?
Yeah, it was in regards to like GDPR for the data. So if it's not an NFT use case,
Yes. So this is actually something we've given a lot of thought about because there's multiple companies that have talked to us, asking for exactly this kind of use case. Notably, they want to do something like loyalty systems. For example, you go to a convenience store, you buy a drink, you scan the QR code after you drink it, and you get some kind of like point in your account. And then if you get like 10 points, you can get a free drink or something like that. The problem with this kind of system is that you're basically associating a QR code with on-chain address. And if that person has like a ENS handle or an ADA handle, you're basically like revealing where that person was at what time and what they bought, which could be a GDPR compliance issue. And so we have some of these projects that want us to have some kind of like privacy layer for their application. We've talked to multiple potential partners on this topic, but it's kind of technically a hard problem. And as you might know, a lot of like the privacy projects are currently focused on like EVM support as like their main use case, not so much like gaming and Web3. So we have a few people we're talking to, but I can't. It's kind of like early, so I can't reveal too much at the moment.
Question about teams. You sent that stack of paper the other day on your desk or somewhere of all the companies you're working with. And I was thinking, what does that mean? So, as someone wanting to build a Paima, can they just do this? What kind of skills do they need, or do you guys need to help them with it right now?
Yeah, good question. Ideally, they don't need our help. Ideally, they can do it themselves. If they need our help, obviously we're there to answer any questions. Now you might be wondering, like, how do I get access to Paima now if I want to build something now? We're still in developer preview. What does that mean? So you can get access to Paima, but it's just like gated access. Like you need to ask us for permission, then we'll share it with you. The reason it's set up this way for now is because we just released and there will be breaking changes. And if we make like a public release where anybody can start building anything, and then we start making breaking changes, this is going to be a nightmare to deal with upgrading everything. So we'd rather just like keep it right now where we know who's building what, and we have a direct line of communication with them. And as things get upgraded, we can just chat with them directly about it. So if you're interested in using Paima, just DM me and we can get you hooked up. Now you might be wondering about like the long-term strategy. Like, okay, we're in developer preview now. What does that look like long-term? Most likely it'll end up being something similar to Unreal Engine. I can't promise anything because this is in the future. We're still kind of investigating what we want to do. But that is to say that if you ever looked at Unreal Engine, it's free to start using. The code is like kind of available, but you need to like sign agreements and all that kind of stuff to get access to it. And the business model for Unreal Engine, and this is the same business model as basically every game engine. It's free to start using, but if you use it and you go over a certain revenue threshold, royalties apply. So that's basically the same business model as Paima Engine. So obviously, if you want to rebuild Paima Engine from scratch yourself, you're more than welcome to. But at the same time, like just like Unity, just like Unreal Engine, just like all these other game engines out there, unfortunately, we're a business and we have to, survive. And so that's kind of the business model.
That makes sense. So what's the thinking around open source and what will be, what wouldn't be, and stuff like that? How are you guys thinking about it?
Sorry. Yeah, this is hard to decide at this point. We'll have like more information about this in the future, but we're trying to make everything available as it makes sense. Our biggest fear with like making stuff available now is twofold. One is that obviously we may release something and then make a breaking change, and then as I mentioned, like it's hard to get people to upgrade if you've already released stuff. So that's why we started in developer preview. On a longer term roadmap, we want to avoid is somebody like making a fork of Paima and then introducing some stupid token, which is like against the entire point. So we're trying to make sure we can get this to people in a way that makes sense, without like getting people to just copy paste the work we spent a very long time building.
That makes a lot of sense. So forgive me because I had phone issues earlier, but help me understand the relationship between Paima, that data layer, and Cardano, and then the layer 2 that the game are happening on. Right. How do those all three like work and interact with each other?
Yeah, good question. So Paima is capable of supporting any EVM-based system. So obviously that includes Milkamita, but could be Ethereum, Mina as well, or any other EVM-based blockchain. Now, obviously, Jungle Wars is running on Milkamita. We bundled with Paima Engine, it comes with functionality to support Cardano wallets. You can play with Nami, Eternal, Flint, all this kind of stuff. And so from that perspective, it's in the Cardano ecosystem, usable from Cardano wallets, uses ADA for everything. But it's not mandatory for you to use that. It's just the default configuration. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of like the relation now, and related to like Cardano mainnet support itself, instead of Milkamita. There's two reasons we decided to pick Milkamita over Cardano mainnet. One of them is that, as you might know, Cardano mainnet is not so friendly to data-heavy use cases. Data is very expensive on Cardano and very limited. So this is something we've talked about for many years at this point. And part of like all the tweets we've made talking about like the changes needed to Cardano to have a better support for rollups includes better data handling. And so once that's addressed, we could more easily bring Paima use cases to Cardano mainnet. Second is that a lot of the use cases that we're talking with, they want soul-bound tokens. if you're not familiar with soulbound tokens, they're tokens that you cannot send to other people. And so Cardano currently does not support soulbound tokens, whereas EVM does and Milkmeda does. So it also, works well with that regard. Another advantage of Milkmeda, which was not part of the original two I was planning to talk about, but it's also more flexible for like making changes to the protocol itself. So we can add new cryptography as required to Milkmeda, the protocol, to enable kind of cool new cases that might be really hard to add to Cardano itself. So it also gives us more flexibility in that regard.
That makes a lot of sense. Woodsy, I'll get to you in another minute here. So back to these different moving pieces. So Paima is the engine. Is it a replacement, then an alternative to Unity if you're building a game, or do you use them together? Or
Yeah. So great question. So Paima is a framework for creating layer 2s. So every game, every app gets its own layer 2. Now, how it compares to like game engines, I like to think of Paima as a Web3 engine instead of a game engine. So if you want to build a game from scratch, you can, but you'll save a lot of time and money by just using Unity, just using Unreal Engine, using Godot, using one of these tools. Similarly, Paima is a Web3 engine. If you want to build an application, you could go learn Solidity, go learn blockchain, learn how it all works and build something from scratch. Or you could use a Web3 engine that has the wallet connection for you, that has the multi-chain for you, that has the Stateful NFT support and the risk-free nature and supports, all these different environments like JavaScript. Like we did all that work for you. And so you'll save like a huge amount of time using it. So that's kind of like hopefully makes it clear like the mental picture of how this works.
yeah, that makes it super clear. So you have all these dev tools to pretty much structure your layer 2 and all your logic and all that stuff in accounting. So then once you have this thing launched, then the next question is where do you run it, right? So then it's either you're running it on Metomeda, or does Paima have runtimes too?
Yeah, so for Paima, usually if you build a game or an application with Paima, you'll end up with two things. You'll end up with the on-chain component, which you just deploy to the blockchain of your choice, such as Milkmeda, and then the off-chain component. Usually the off-chain component is what you will give to users. Like they'll run this on their mobile phone or in their browser. And those are the only two things you need. Now, you as a game developer may choose to add a third component, which is like a light client you run and you host on your own machine or on some cloud provider. It's not required. Just like if you use Datalist, if you run the Datalist client and you have the Cardano blockchain, you can do everything yourself. But some people choose to use light wallets. It's kind of a similar situation.
That's super cool. So then what kind of skills do you need to work with the Paima engine? Is it TypeScript, Java, Rust, or something completely new?
Yeah, we tried to make TypeScript be the easiest experience. The reason why is because most game engines these days have some kind of plugin for running JavaScript inside their engine. So TypeScript runs really well in the browser, as well as it's supported in some way, shape, or form by most like game engines and most tools. So it just felt like the thing with the lowest barrier to entry and the most compatibility. And so hopefully you don't have to know that much about like blockchains and how they work to use Paima. I mean, you'll need to know like NFTs and the concept of NFTs. But we tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. Now, to manage expectation, obviously, we just released the first version to the public. We tried our best for V1. We'll keep simplifying things. And the end goal is basically to try and make this as easy to build with as possible.
Sweet, as Lido would say. What's up, Weird Woodsy?
I just want to know a couple things, if it's cool. One, I'd like to know, behind the scenes, are you using something like 3JS or Babylon or something similar? Or is it, custom? And then two, you mentioned sort of like similar licensing as to what Unreal offers. And I was kind of curious if you could dig into that a little more and like what the payment looks like. Are you able to make that happen automatically and through crypto? Because all of that would be awesome. And I like I didn't pick up, I didn't really understand what was going on at first, but then I checked out the Paima website and realized like how closely aligned it is with like some things that I'm trying to do and have been trying to do. So I'm just kind of curious, like if there's any info you can give or talk about on those things, please and thanks.
Yeah, sure. So to answer your first question about Babylon.js, so Paima comes with templates. So also you could start your project from scratch, but most people probably will not want to start a project from scratch. So we have templates for you to start with. Notably, we have templates for Babylon.js, Unity, GameMaker, TypeScript, and I think a few other things. And we're constantly working on adding more templates. That way, if, for example, you want to build a game with Babylon.js or an application with Babylon.js, you can just use the Babylon.js template and it'll have everything set up for you. So obviously, we have templates we've built ourselves. Hopefully, other companies will come and build templates themselves for different game engines. Babylon.js is definitely something we looked into and did build ourselves. Paima Engine itself does not require it. It's up to you as a game or application developer to choose which template best fits your needs. Related to the license, how automatic it can be depends on your use case. So for example, if you create an application where the only like monetization from your application is the sale of an NFT, then yeah, I mean, you can just, somehow set up some kind of recurring royalty to Paima, and, that would just be automatic. And obviously, every company has different needs, and their business model may be more complicated than that. So it's on a per company basis how automatic that can be, and hopefully that answers your question.
I'm not sure if I was clear, but maybe I misunderstood what you were saying originally. But that's all good. I dig what you're doing, and I'm actually building. So my first NFT was Worlds Within, and we used A-Frame, which uses WebGL in the end, which a lot of these frameworks do. And I'm currently building something with 3JS, so definitely interested in what you got going on here, and if there is, if you're looking for beta testers or whatever. I don't think it's out yet, right? So I don't know, just hit me up if you need someone.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we're in the developer preview, so we can share access to Paima Engine to anybody who just contacts us. So just send me a DM, and I can get the information required, get you included in the Discord, get you access to the engine code, and everything you need to get started.
Send the man a DM, people. I have not seen Sebastien this animated or excited in like forever, as he has been about Paima. So I'm sure he's happy to get you in there. What's up, Maggie?
Yeah, my question was going to be around Paima's relationship to Reflect and what you guys are planning to do together, if anything.
At the moment, there's no relation other than just DMs and calls and conversations. There's no kind of deal or ownership or stock or anything like that, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, no, I meant like if you guys were going to planning to work together. I know that they're planning to do like NFT gaming related
Yeah.
stuff, I think. So
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like a
we're
good.
yeah, we're more than happy to work with IOG or Mergo or Reflect or the Cardano Foundation, or any of you folks, your bright minds in the chat as well. So more than happy to work with everybody.
So can we revisit the note? Oh, go ahead, Jenny. Jenny.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Lido.
Can we revisit the node token situation? So if a team is building a layer 2 using the Paima engine and they do want a token, is that, can they do that even though Paima doesn't have
Yep.
a token?
Yep.
Okay.
We don't force you to do any specific thing. So you can have any NFT you want, any token you want, any business model you want.
But the token will be on Cardano or in Paima.
If you deploy it to Milkamita, it'll be on Milkamita.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I mean. Cool.
Yeah. What I mean by Paima no token is that Paima itself does not force you to use a token. Like if you want to create a game, there's no clause that says you have to use the Paima token for your game. You can do whatever you want. You can have your own token, you can have no token. It's entirely up to you as the game or application developer.
If Paima had a token though, wouldn't the subscription models and like paying for Paima services be pretty straightforward? Like it would you just use the token.
Well, you would replace this with a clause that says you have to use the token. So
right.
You don't really get around it, and I feel like the token, like trying to force people to use a token, like is a much bigger hit on user experience than having a royalty instead, which is much smoother.
And so when you say royalties, that means Paima Studio is open to accepting a lot of crypto, right? So like Algo and ADA and wherever you support those outputs, you would then be able to receive payments from that blockchain. Mana, if it has a does my question make sense?
Yeah, we are flexible on this. Obviously, if you're going to pay us in like Lido tokens, I'm not sure if a Lido token exists, but if it does, like, I'm not sure if there's enough liquidity for us to accept this. But as long as like, yeah, it's like something that's actually real and not some like, pseudo token you're using to get around, paying us, then yeah, that's fine.
That's cool. What's up, Jenny? Were you gonna say something earlier?
Well, yeah, I had a couple of things that I just wanted to clarify. So basically, Stateful NFTs are supported by any wallet in Cardano? Is that what you said?
So they're supported by any EVM compatible wallet, which includes Flint wallet and includes NuFi wallet, which also has Cardano support.
So those two wallets. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, you can use MetaMask if you want, but yeah.
Is that something that you like? Any wallet can actually integrate themselves if they want to participate in this?
Yeah, because Paima currently runs on EVM, such as Milkamita, any wallet that wants to integrate this has to add EVM support. So this is the downside of this choice. As I mentioned earlier, we'd be happy to add Cardano support one day, but I just think for most use cases, unfortunately, the fact that Cardano has very strict limits on data, whereas Stateful NFTs are very much like a data-focused solution. This won't really work until Cardano makes some changes to the protocol, and we're more than happy to help advocate for these changes, help write the tips for these changes, as we've done for the past few years.
What kind of changes will we need for that? Like if you will want to rally people that they're interested in doing that, making those changes.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that right now Cardano has very limited data. Like as I mentioned, like the way we do the stateful NFTs is that the data lives on the blockchain instead of like being encoded as tokens or instead of being encoded as transactions. Sorry, everything's just encoded as data. But currently, as you might know, for Cardano, like the amount of data you can have in the transaction is fairly limited. The transaction fees for this are fairly high. So to handle like better, like to have better support for rollups in Cardano and these kinds of layer twos, there are many things that are required. But one thing that probably also, would help us a lot for this and rollups in general is some kind of data layer for Cardano. There's a lot of ways this could be built, and there's a lot of projects that have done this in other ecosystems to take inspiration from, including Polygon Avail, including Celestia, including EIP 444, which is proto-dank sharding for Ethereum. A lot of other ecosystems are looking into how to build these kinds of data layers for the blockchains exactly for this same reason. So this is the kind of thing we'll need in Cardano as well to easily support this kind of use case.
Just to double click on that quickly, Blackjack. So the stuff that TX Pipe is working on, Dolos, I think, is that a separate thing from what you're talking about when it comes to like a data layer?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because what they're doing is not like make it easier to store data in the Cardano. They're not making it easier to store data that is secured by the Cardano network. They're making a node that can more easily parse data that's already there. So they're like on the reading side, not so much on like the writing side. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's up, Blackjack?
Hey guys, good morning. Good morning, Sebastien. So I'm just curious. First off, I wanted to ask you a question, Sebastien, surrounding your role within Macomata, which to me seems like a hybrid role of CTO, CEO. Would you qualify yourself as that? Is that kind of what you are, or what would you say your title is within these particular companies that you're a part of?
Yeah, I much prefer just co-founder instead of these roles because realistically, Nico and Robert, my two other co-founders, they do a huge amount of work.
Right.
I am the like most publicly visible person, and
Right.
so I'm the name people usually associate with these projects. But as you can imagine, the more time I spend in these Twitter spaces, it's time I'm not spending coding, and there's definitely
Right.
a lot of people in the background doing these works.
Well,
So I
so
just prefer co-founder because I respect the huge amount of work that their team, including my other two co-founders, are doing.
Sure. Yeah, and the reason I'm asking it is just simply because in essence, you're kind of the vision guy, and you can actually see, a bit of the future because you're actually writing the code that drives the vehicle, right? So for me, when I think about this, it's like you're one of the first ones that kind of, in essence, split off your side chain. You're not working directly with Cardano. You've done a variety of things, and you're your own entity, and there is no token, which I've absolutely always loved. That you've put that in parentheses over the time period that you've been involved with Cardano. With that in mind, there have been some changes lately as far as, and some people, I think they react to it in a fearful way, and I'm not sure if it's misplaced, but with different projects that have generated either revenue or gotten money in Catalyst or whatever the case may be, but they derive most of their revenue, right, to give their runway as far as developing their DApp and all these things. They're starting to look outside of Cardano for certain things that will help them launch sooner or give them a utility or a capability that they need sooner because they're running out of one runway, right? And if you're a good CFO, you pay attention to this stuff. In order to succeed, you then start to look outside the box for solutions to that in order to make sure that you survive, right? And this is a common practice that everybody does. And I'm curious, is your thoughts on that as far as the broader Cardano ecosystem and crypto as a whole, and because of what you've done with your business, which has made sure that no matter what, you will succeed, right? No one thing, because you've hedged your bets in so many different areas, could bring you down in essence, right? So I'm just curious your thoughts on that and what you see as the future and what maybe is holding back or holding us back in Cardano as far as dApps and what they're looking for that Cardano's blockchain currently can't provide, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Wow, that is a really broad question.
It is a very broad question, and I just want you to put your visionary
Very
hat on.
blackjack, very sort of
Very
randomish.
blackjack. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'll try and
your
answer.
opinion, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily call myself the visionary guy. I would say I'm the guy who tries to translate the vision to the greater community. For a lot of the projects we often have three-way calls between me and my co-founders to decide strategy, decide technical vision, and all this kind of stuff. And I end up often being the one to communicate that. So I just want to make sure that, I don't want to take too much credit from other people on our team doing amazing work. Also, related to just Cardano in general, I mean, obviously we're doing a huge amount of work in Cardano. As you know, we've submitted many Catalyst proposals. I think we have a really good track record of delivering on those proposals. We've completed almost every Catalyst proposal we've submitted. There's a few of them that we're still working on completing. And so I think we have a good track record. And I think, if anything, we probably asked for too little money for these proposals. We didn't expect Catalyst to just be paused and things to go the way they did. But despite this, we worked through all of them anyway. Related to like Cardano in general and how I think we can, maintain competitiveness as an ecosystem. I mean, I think one of the main strengths of Cardano has always been the vision. And I think it's why a lot of people stay here, despite the fact that there's no like massive grants from these centralized entities that have allocated a huge amount of money to their treasuries from a pre-sale. And so that's always, something to, try and focus on. But I think like beyond that, we have to try and decide like what are the key properties of Cardano? Like what is the Cardano community providing that you can't get from other blockchain? And I think right now, like our key value proposition is like the size of the community, the network effect, the distribution of ADA, which is more fair than a lot of the newer protocols. But also I think Ouroboros is like one of the key value propositions. Like IoT built a really awesome proof of stake protocol. There's really nice properties. People can easily start staking. They can easily create stake pools. They can stake while using dApps. Like these are a lot of properties that a lot of other chains do not have. There's some stuff that I think we put too much effort into that was not a key value proposition, notably Plutus. I think if you were to ask the average person why they're so bullish on Cardano, the number of people that say Plutus is probably not so high. Probably the number of people who know Plutus outside of the Cardano ecosystem is not so high. And yet, despite this, if you look at the hard forks over the past about 2 years or so, most of them have been about changes to Plutus. And, as you've heard me talk throughout the space, a lot of the times when you give me a feature request or like something you say you'd love to see exist, my response is like, well, I'd love to as well, but there's only 24 hours in a day. This applies not just to us, but to everybody as well, including IoT and people working on the core protocol. So every time you see like a hard fork that introduces new changes to Plutus, keep in mind this is also engineering work and management work that could have been spent improving Ouroboros, which I think is the key value proposition to Cardano. Now that's not to say we should just give up Plutus and just remove smart contracts from Cardano and go home. Obviously, that's not realistic. But what I think is a key is trying to enable more innovation on the VM layer by third parties instead of making it like a core mandate of Cardano core developers itself. And this is part of the reason why I've been so such an advocate of layer 2s, because what are layer 2s? It's a way for you to add new virtual machines to existing protocols. So you could add, EVM to Cardano. You could add, this Paima system to Cardano. So you can have layer 2s for gaming and DeFi. You could add this Lana VM to Cardano if you want, or you could add Move VM, like the Move language from Aptos and Suite to Cardano. Like, you could just have any company come in and add new capabilities to Cardano as layer 2s. And then, if we enable this kind of future, then, changes to virtual machines, enabling these kinds of new ways to write code is no longer something that the core Cardano development team has to focus on. It's something that is free and open for innovation from the community. And the core Cardano developers can focus on the core value proposition of Cardano, which is, keep working on Ouroboros and making that side of the protocol really awesome. Now, unfortunately, as you might know, we're not quite at a point where this is doable because currently building rollups on Cardano is not so easy with the current setup. It will get better. There are some SIPs like SIP 38 that we've made at DC Spark that will help with this. There's other SIPs that also will help with this, including one that got merged recently, which is the Bitwise SIP. I forgot the SIP number, which was by M Labs and a few other people. And so there's definitely progress being made on this to make projects like rollups easier on Cardano. There's obviously work done on Hydra, which is a different kind of layer 2, but will also enable some new use cases. And there's some work on sidechains like Milkmeat as well, done by Milkmeat team. And so it's not like nobody's working on this. Things are being pushed from many different companies from many different fronts. But when it comes to like allocating funding from Cardano, deciding how you want to grow the ecosystem going forward, what we want to prioritize, from a technical perspective, that would be my suggestion.
But I appreciate that, and I think it's important that we all stay on the same page, and everybody can talk about their issues and be open and honest about it as much as they possibly can. Obviously, every one of the big projects is working with IOG, and you want that relationship to be open and to be open-minded to things that you guys need. And I think ultimately they're doing that, right? Yeah, I appreciate your honesty there, and thanks, Sebastien.
Sebastian, it's midnight. Just some quick rapid fire questions, and then we can let you get some sleep if you sleep.
Yeah, I have Sebastian until 12, but I know I'm not gonna hold him for that. Sebastian, I have a question for you. I know, Lido, you have a lot of questions. You have another question, Lido, before I go to mine?
I've got a couple from the DM, but go first.
Okay, so I see that you guys have some partnerships, and I see that one of them is actually of Microsoft. What do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as some of you may know, I used to work at Microsoft before getting into the Cardano ecosystem. And through that, I knew some people at Microsoft Japan, where if you don't know, I also live in Tokyo, Japan. And through those connections, I got introduced through Microsoft for Startups Japan and the people there. And we got Paima and Milkmeat included in the Microsoft for Startups program. We've since held events with Microsoft at their office in Tokyo and elsewhere. We talk to them fairly regularly. We have some stuff in the pipeline as well. But this is primarily with the Japan office that we're doing all this stuff with, not so much the global office. But we have a few ideas, and stick around and see what.
Like, is it like more like gaming related or other applications, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, that you can also?
Yeah, I don't want to like overpromise on something because we're still kind of early days on everything, considering we just got the developer preview out. But we are kind of talking to a lot of companies on a lot of opportunities, not just gaming.
That's great. I like to hear that, because if you do have more to offer with this, I would like to see more use cases for sure. Even though gaming is exciting, right? And I can see a lot of use cases for that. What about the games? Like, have you gotten a lot of requests or interest within the community, the gaming community within Cardano? Is it
Yeah,
word spreading?
Yeah, we've gotten about 30 projects that have reached out to us saying they want to join the developer preview, of which a lot come from the Cardano community. It does not only come from the Cardano community. We've got some projects from Polygon, from Ethereum, and some other places that have applied as well, but primarily from Cardano. Some of them are projects that have existing NFTs and they want to get into gaming. Some of these are projects that have been trying to build a game, but they've been struggling with Plutus or something like that, and they'd rather just leverage the stuff we've built instead of doing all of it with themselves. Because this, as I mentioned, like Paima took over a year to get to the stage, and this is with a team of like multiple people who have been in the blockchain space for 5 years. And so for some of these projects, turns out building some on-chain game was more complicated than they expected, and so they're hoping to use Paima to build a better experience faster and cheaper.
That's sweet. And then for the Jungle Wars game that you have right now available for playing, do you have actual stateful NFTs available yet as well, or just the gameplay?
Yes. So they come with a NFT collection called Paima Buccaneers. They cost 10 ADA to mint, and there's an infinite supply. And they're used in game to track your wins and losses and the characters you unlock in the game. So they're stateful in that regard. They're like what I like to call like stateful NFT V1, which is that they can encode stuff like wins and losses and characters you've unlocked. And it's kind of like simple information. We are working on kind of the next iteration of stateful NFTs that will enable some more complex state to be encoded in these NFTs, and we'll hopefully have that out fairly soon. I think we've already got a lot of the code working, and next step is just to build out some use cases that leverage these.
Exciting. And is this like available mobile to play or not yet?
No, unfortunately, so Jungle Wars uses WebGL, which is a technology that works well on desktop, but most mobile phones don't support it yet. So if you have a high-end mobile phone, it might work for you. Otherwise, you might get an error saying like your phone does not have enough memory or whatever to run this game, unfortunately.
Sweet. And I have another question for you. Are we going to see you at Rare Evo this year? I know you were a Rare Bloom last year.
It's possible. I don't want to commit to something now. The reason why is because, as I mentioned earlier in this, a lot of our funding comes from grants from Catalyst, which has paused in October. And traveling internationally is not only a huge time commitment, but also really expensive, costs thousands of dollars. And so it's kind of tough for me to travel to other locations at the moment. There are some events that I would like to go to if I can find a way to make it work. But I want to avoid kind of overcommitting to stuff.
Totally understandable. 100%. And if anybody else has a quick question before we wrap it up, this is your last chance. Before Lido.
So question from the DM: can you bridge a token from Cardano to Macomeda and use in a Paima game?
Yeah, good question. So there is a bridge from Milkmia to Cardano that currently supports ADA as well as a select few Cardano native tokens. To get a new token listed on that bridge, you need approval from the Milkmia validators. So I can't promise any token gets listed. And also, we currently don't support bridging NFTs. We have passed the Catalyst proposal in the past to create this NFT bridge. And we have a spec written for it, but unfortunately, we just haven't had the time to do the implementation. But just FYI, once we do build this NFT bridge, the V1 will be from Milkmia NFTs to Cardano and not the other way around. So if you want to build an application using Paima, my recommendation is to mint NFTs on the Milkmia side. I think for a lot of collections, they want to mint new NFTs for Paima projects anyways, because as I mentioned, the Paima NFTs are usually like accounts in a game. And usually for these, like to have as many players as possible, you want to just make these stateful NFTs cheap and with the supply. So we've had a lot of projects, reach out to us saying, okay, I want, some Cardano NFTs that's like my gated community where you get access to the events and perks and blah, blah. And I also have this game that's, really low cost or free to join in for anybody to get started. So I think most projects wanted this anyway.
Super cool. What were you gonna say, Cook Time? Shrek Time?
Oh, I had some questions, but they were what Jenny asked, so they're covered. No worries.
Lit. What's you guys' plan to get this thing adopted after it comes out of developer preview?
So I plan to get it what?
Adoption. Especially with
adoption.
with that money,
Yeah.
with that advertising money.
Yeah, good question. I mean, our hope is to be profitable this year. Now one can dream.
Ooh, that's new for you guys.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I wouldn't say it's particularly new. I mean, revenue is like DC Spark. I wouldn't say it's making revenue, but I wouldn't say it's like losing money either. It's a bit under break even just because Callus has been paused for a really long time. But it's not like in a bad financial situation, and Paima, because of all these projects that are hoping to work with us, I think it's entirely possible we are profitable this year, and hopefully once we're profitable we can return the favor and invest back into the ecosystem. We also have some ideas for some CAD proposals related to Paima. So for example, I mentioned this kind of proof of attendance protocol that we'd like to build for the Cardano ecosystem. Now, ideally, this is not a product that we own because by design, it's meant to be something that, Cardano over coffee could use or any other Twitter space could use and just openly, create NFTs, for their events and Twitter spaces and so on. And so since this is not like a business, it's like, an open source standard that people can use. Like hopefully that kind of stuff we could, deploy as Cal's proposal, get that built for the community, get that as an open standard anybody can use. And then, this kind of stuff also just shows what you can do with Paima Engine and might get more people interested. And for a lot of these people, it could be their first stateful NFT because they go to CNFT Con, they go to Cardano Summit, they go to these events. If those events decide to use this protocol, then that might be their first stateful NFT. Get in their hands and get them involved and understand what Paima's all about.
Super cool. Well, I think we will call it there. Considering it's past midnight for you. How much sleep do you need typically to be functional?
Around 8 hours. I'm not like special in this regard, unfortunately. I wish I was. Oftentimes I don't sleep. Oftentimes I don't sleep like in one large chunk.
I have a last nerdy question for you, Sebastian, and it's not like it's just because I saw it and I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to see if you can elaborate on it. And it's about the UTXO selection algorithm you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
Good Bill coming down.
Like, explanation in general?
Yeah. What like just tell us a little bit about it because it just looks really interesting.
Yeah, sure. So there's a Twitter thread on this, so I'm not sure if somebody wants to pin it while I talk about it.
I'll look for it, yeah, for sure.
Okay, and thanks. And so basically the way Cardano works is kind of like coins in a purse. Like if you look at your balance on, non-me eternal Flint, it looks like one number. But the way it works internally, it's kind of like coins in a purse. You have like a $5 coin, a $10 coin, and the sum of all the coins in your purse is your balance shown in your wallet. And if you ever heard the term UTXO, that's kind of what it means. Now that means that just like when you go to a convenience store and they say like, okay, that'll be $9.99, and then you open your coin purse and you're like, okay, I could pay with a $10, but then I'll get 1 cent in change. But I don't want 1 cent in change. Like I don't want a penny. So you try and like add more than you need to pay, and then you get some money back as change. Wallets and Cardano actually do the same thing for you behind the scenes. But you can imagine if you accidentally don't do this optimally, you might end up with cases where your wallet is full of pennies, or you might end up with cases where you go to to the parking meter and it asks you to put in quarters and you're out of quarters. Depending on like what you're trying to do, there's ways to like pick the coins out of your wallet or your purse to optimize for like what you're trying to do. Now in the blockchain case, obviously this is more complicated than this real life example, because in the blockchain case, your wallet has, in the degen case, thousands of NFTs, and then also a whole bunch of native tokens and all this kind of stuff. And your wallet is trying to figure out how to best rearrange your coins to avoid you paying too much transaction fees. You can imagine like if your purse is just a bunch of pennies, if somebody asks you to pay $1, you're giving them like 100 pennies, and this is like non-efficient. Similarly, for your wallet in Cardano, if somebody asks you to send them 10 ADA, you have to pay them like a whole bunch of like small UTXO entries. This is just inefficient and leads to higher transaction fees. And so it'd be nice if we say, okay, well, here's an algorithm that wallets can use, like Nami, like Eternally and Flint, and here's an algorithm you can use. It'll analyze the wallet, figure out like the best way to like spend these coins to give the best user experience. But unfortunately, we don't have this at the moment. The reason why is because, as you can imagine, this is a hard problem. Like, how do you decide what the best algorithm is? And what's even worse is that not only is it a hard problem, there is no way to compare solutions. So people have come up with different algorithms in the past and say, like, actually, like, here's one I made. I think it works well. But it's like a question of, like, okay, well, does it actually work well? Like, is it better than mine? Who knows? So what we've created is a benchmarking tool that allows you to generate graphs to see how well these different algorithms compare. So I can provide a solution, you can provide a solution, and then we can run the graph, and I can say like, okay, your algorithm does really well and the user has a bunch of NFTs. But you can see in this other case, like when the user has no NFTs, like actually my algorithm does better. And so we can say like, okay, well, my algorithm, maybe it's not good for NFTs, but it's really good for like DEXs. Like this is a good algorithm for DEXs, or a good algorithm for Milkmida, for example. So it tries to help us get like a common language on deciding which algorithm is best. And hopefully that will make it easier for people to innovate in these kinds of algorithms for Cardano, which at the end of the day will lead to much lower transaction fees, both for users as you're using the wallet, and also for protocols as well. Like if we can get protocols like SundaeSwap or Liquid or ADA Finance to have much lower transaction fees, this means that you as a user of these protocols are also paying less. So it's giving more money back to the community in a sense by just optimizing the way the protocol is used.
Nice. So I also I pinned up the thread, and I also pinned up the actual direct GitHub for the selection benchmarking, the UTXO selection. That's pretty cool. Looking forward to see what goes on with that. And we had Zach here with probably the last question of the day, if that's okay with you, Sebastien.
Yeah, go for it.
Welcome, Zach.
Hello. Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, cool. So first of all, I appreciate everything that you guys do every single day, possibly the best space on Twitter. So round of applause to you guys. Sebastien, been a massive fan for a very long time. You've provided me with so much insights and education. I've got a really simple question for you. Why do people not build games for fun anymore since the Web3 space has been fully developed? Well, it's not completely fully developed, but since it's been popping off, right? I've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of projects, they're coming in and like the fun element of gaming has just completely been taken away, and everyone's just solely focused on how am I going to play to earn? How am I going to play to earn? Where's the fun, man? Is there some 2 cents, some opinion on that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're trying to solve with Paima in a sense. I mean, somebody could use Paima to create a play-to-earn game. But I think the unique thing is that we don't require you to do it. And I think there's a huge untapped market in that. In fact, the first game built with Paima called Jungle Wars, the NFTs for that game have an unlimited supply with a fixed cost of 10 ADA. You can always buy for 10 ADA. It will never go above 10 ADA in price. And yet, despite this, we sold over 1,500 of these. So it shows that a lot of people were willing to buy these to get their stats tracked in game. Because these NFTs are stateful NFTs, so all your wins, your losses, the characters you unlock are all tied to these NFTs, and shows that people care about NFT ownership based off the value they encode and not so much price goes
Scarcity.
up by the scarcity narrative. So this is what we're trying to enable, and I think since Paima is not just for gaming, as we talked about earlier in this space, I'm not sure if you were there for that, but also we have some cool new use cases we can enable, traceability and identity and participation protocols. Hopefully we'll kind of open the space to a new era of not just games, but gamification and building more fun and more engaging experiences than what people have been experimenting with so far.
But do you feel that people will continue to get involved in gaming and Web3 because of like the achievements and the capabilities or statistics that they can get? Or are people always going to be gaming just for the fun of it? Because I kind of feel like there's a new evolution of gaming that people are ignoring because of the data that's being provided by Web3.
Yeah, I mean, well, the enjoyable part is how you get people to come into the game and play the game, right? That's like the main thing, and the data associated with it is meant to give like the user feedback and enjoyment of owning something. I mean, it's kind of like, why have people really got into NFTs when digital art was already available before NFTs were created? People just really like the concept of owning, these digital pictures. And so in the same way, I'm sure there'll be a bunch of people that will enjoy owning, having full ownership of their progress in a game. And, just like how there's people out there who buy, these NFTs just because, they like the art or they want to support the creator, or they want to support a cause, or just, for example, like proof of attendance NFTs are extremely popular. People go to events and then buy, or not buy, but like sign up to receive an NFT to show they attended the event, despite the fact that oftentimes these cannot be transferred. They're soul bound, so they'll never make money. I think in the same way, people will be, engaging with these games for the sense of ownership. And I think there's quite a big market in this.
Nice.
Well, I think we can let you off the hot seat now, Sebastian. It's been 2 hours. I can't believe you stuck around the whole time. You're awesome.
Seriously, dude? You've been talking for 2 hours? Damn, respect for Cardano.
We've been here since like what, 9:30, yeah. And he was one of the first ones in. So shout out to you for that. Sorry about my voice. Like I came back from New York City like this and try my best. Thank you so much for coming, Sebastian, and sharing all this with us. I hope you come back again. We miss you when you used to come by and hang out sometimes. So don't forget that we're here. Just stop by once in a while. I know the time is different, but we love you and support you, and so happy to have you.
Thanks for listening to Cardano over coffee, and remember to join us live Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on Twitter Spaces.